how do Christians properly go about bringing people back to Christianity? So we talked about a bunch of the issues of things that potentially are driving people away, why people are leaving Christianity. From your perspective, how do Christians themselves, the people who want this inclusive property of religion and of their faith to expand across the globe, how do they go about bringing people back to the Christian faith?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we've got to do is we have to be a lot more careful about the language we use. You know, when people criticize and they say, well, you know, that's just semantics. Oh, you better believe it is. And, you know, that precise language, that means everything. And so, you know, you have to be really careful to not just throw out claims that aren't true. You have to really think about these claims, and you know, don't get so bogged down with someone challenges you and you have to respond right away. You might have to go home and think about that for a month before you can respond and say, you know what, I had to think about that so that I could give you an adequate response, not just something I fired off in an email or fired off in a phone conversation or whatever. So one is, I think we got to be really careful about the language that we use. I think the other thing is that we really have to be willing to engage in conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, this whole like unfriend block, that's not good. If you're in that kind of mentality, like, you got to stop it.
Dave, before you move on, I want to pause on that for a minute, because I want to have you expand on that piece a little bit, just because of what's going on right now, right? There's the way conversation goes right now, whether like you're on, just to use political language, the left or the right side of the conversation, there's people on both sides that it seems are so resistant by their dictation on social media, their articulation in person. They're so resistant to even having the conversation. So maybe you can expand on that piece of engaging the conversation a little bit further to how do you go about doing that with people who seem so, and in some ways, so violently against that?
Yeah, you know, and I think that's such a good point. I think one of the big things that we've got to do is we have to be willing to engage in that conversation. You know, when someone throws something out there, engage it. And like, is it maybe going to hurt your feelings? Maybe, but you got to engage it. And, you know, when someone throws something out there like that, listen to what they're saying. Like, there is something behind the words that they're saying. They're not just like, here's the words, read them at face value. There's something behind that. And you can't get the behind meaning until you get to know them, until you engage them in a relationship. Listen before you speak, ask questions. You know, a great teaching tool is don't respond with a comment, respond with a question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So true.
And, you know, okay, so fine. We have this political difference here, or moral difference, or whatever. Respond with a question and make it thought-provoking, not this yes or no. Make it a thought-provoking question, and be really smart about the way you communicate. You know, I think another thing, you know, politics or morality or whatever, you know, bringing it back to the Christian focus that, you know, that this podcast is about, you know, you might run into someone who says, well, you know, I went to Catholic school. I know what the church teaches. And when someone says that, they're oftentimes not Catholic, and they've probably been really badly hurt by something in their past that made them walk away. And, you know, what's more important, like winning the argument or listening and saying, you know, like diving deep in it and getting to the point and saying, you know, eventually, hopefully after a month or two of dialogue, what's the thing that really hurt you about this? Because I think that there's just so much pain out there in the world, not just in Christian circles. I think it's just everywhere. There's so much pain. If we can't engage with that pain, like, what the heck are we even doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, I really do believe this. I do believe this. People naturally have a desire to be better people.
Yeah.
You know, you're right. We have this crazy vitriol out there, but I do believe that everyone desires to be better. Like, you as a human being have a natural feeling that you're supposed to act in a certain way. And you either act in accord with that nature or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that the only way that we can kind of like help to elevate each other is to engage in that conversation and try to pull each other along, and pull me along. Like I do all kinds of immoral things that I need people to like, hey Dave, don't do that. And that's why I go to confession, thank goodness. Right? But
There you go.
But you got to have people to pull you along and get you in that mindset.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out this clip from the Practical Theism podcast. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to check out the full episode, you can do so by finding it on our YouTube channel. Definitely consider subscribing and ringing that little bell so you can continue to get updates and notifications when we release new episodes and new clips just like this one. I hope to see you soon.